For those of you who aren't familiar with Geoff, and Geoff and I are going to have a conversation. This is great for me. I'm going to get to ask somebody else questions. They get to answer. You should know a little bit about the Harlem Children's Zone if you don't know already. It's an area in Manhattan, obviously, that covers less than 1 square mile, and it's home to about 10,000 children. The neighborhood's coming back to life. Newly renovated townhouses are side by side with buildings that have fallen victim to violence and drug use and despair. Local businesses next to national chain stores. But despite all the renewal, nearly all the children live in poverty. We know that. 2/3 of them score below grade level on standardized tests, and that's why Geoff, who had a good education himself, both at Bowdoin and at the Harvard School of Education, came back and claimed this territory as his own and tried to talk a little bit about, you talked about innovation. What's the freedom that you have and what you're doing now in the Harlem Children's Zone that you didn't have when you were teaching in a traditional public school? Because I think it's really interesting.
I think that the big difference for us is we can meet as a team of administrators and teachers, figure out what we need to do, and do it, and we don't have to talk to another person, right? It's just those of us in the room, we sit down, we say, you know what, that didn't work. I said, did you guys do X, Y? Yeah, that didn't work. I say, so we need to come up with a new plan, and if the plan is we need to work Saturdays, believe me, that's the plan, then we work Saturdays. If the plan is we need to work July because it's not happening for our kids, then we work July. Because if you come in and we find out, having made the mistake of bringing you in, that you can't teach, right, and we work with you and we try and we support you and we do all those things, and then the kids don't learn, well, then you have to do something else. You cannot be inside our schools. And I think that kind of freedom to make the decisions, if you run a business, I don't think there's anything controversial about these kind of decisions. If you everybody I know who runs a business in America meets with their team, figures out what they need to do, and then does it. When people don't work out, they let them go and they replace them with better people. That's the way most businesses run. If businesses are not successful, they go out of business. That happens everywhere except education. Education is the only place you have the option to fail.
It is
right?
The truth, that in no other place can you get away with that measure of consistent failure and continue to operate the way you do. One of the things that you also hear, and we've heard this Geoff and I have been on a few different panels together. We were hanging with Oprah last Friday. One of the things we did hear all the time is about parents. Well, the school can't do this because the parents are the problem, and so the excuse or the blame is pointed towards the parents. And so I wondered if you'd respond to that, Geoff, and also how you include parents in the process in what you're doing.
Our message to our parents are that you're part of the education of your child. But we also recognize that some of our parents, maybe they have substance abuse problems, maybe they have mental health problems. They are not ready to be full partners in this, or sometimes partners at all. And we still have to educate those children. So while we say we need parent engagement, we cannot use the lack of parent engagement as an excuse for not educating children, right? That's the challenge.
We've spoken about accountability and results that you demand from your teachers. And the response that I've gotten from some corners, and which corners those are, is, well, this isn't the right way to compensate teachers. You shouldn't be trying to look at testing or other things to gauge accountability and success. You've had success up there. Why don't you tell everybody how you deal with the issues of accountability, engaging success, and tracking that, and why it's worked up there and why it might work here?
Well, I think in the end, this is one of those issues that, again, people get upset about. This issue of can we measure teacher effectiveness? Can we hold teachers and principals accountable for the results of young people? There are a group of folk who want to argue that you can't do that. Now, that to me is one of those things that if you start down that road that you really can't measure teacher, then let anybody teach. Why? You can bring in just people off the street and say teach, because it doesn't matter. We can't measure it anyhow. We don't know what good teaching really looks like. I think we actually can measure whether or not a person is a good teacher. And I think this issue of measuring teacher effectiveness is critical, because only then can you figure out how to hold people accountable. In the current system, if you don't measure anything, then you can't say, you know what, it was you, Geoff, who failed those kids. When you got them, they were fine. When they left you, they were not fine. So guess whose fault that is? I don't want to hear about the mamas. I don't want to hear about the rest. See, that is so simple, right, and direct that it pulls the covers off of what the issue is. And the accountability goes to the big problem I find in education. The kids don't do well, right? And then they end up getting left back. They end up not graduating school. They end up getting a problem. But the system just goes on fine, and all of the adults get to stay and do well. They all go on vacations. They do well. This, to me, is such a crisis. And I really mean this. This is such a crisis. If we do this for the next 10, 15 years, we will watch this nation decline.
We're saying in New Jersey from now forward, what we should do is say teachers are going to be held accountable like everybody else for the progress of their students, not for the absolute number of how they achieve, but for the progress of their students. And we need to test kids that way, and we need to hold teachers accountable for that. And for those teachers who do great, they should make much more than they're making now, because we want them to stay. We want to keep that stamina. We want them to feel rewarded and valued, and we should pay them more. And for those teachers who don't succeed, we invite them to pursue another career. Because it doesn't mean, like Geoff says, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean they're not trying hard. I mean, some of them aren't. But some of them are, just aren't good at it. That's okay. I mean, we have to, though, not accept that as being what we need to do for our kids. And I thought, after spending a lot of time with Geoff over the last week or so, that having him here with me today to give you an example of what is possible gives hope. And hope is the greatest gift that we can give to each other, is that today is not the best that we could think of, that tomorrow can be better. And that's what we want for our kids, is for them to feel that way too.